Bam. Live. Okay. So, we'll see what happens. But you guys are far more perceptive than one might think. And I say that because to those of you who pay attention, you may recognize or acknowledge that the people I tagged in here are going to be people of varying extremes of beliefs. And I'm not sure that the last few people will actually pay attention to this, but we'll see. So I am going to start out with a quote from Reagan. And what he said is this. He said, "The price of freedom may be very high, but the cost," let me make sure I say it right, "but never so costly as the loss of freedom," right? The price of freedom may be high, but never so costly as the loss of freedom. So this is what I want to start out with. However this election comes to a close, however it happens, we have to find unity. And I don't mean unity the way some Congress people are calling for it now, asking for legislative assistance in creating a blacklist, because that's not unity. But I mean unity as parts of a whole that know the value of us all coming together, and that unity has value because of the variety of people that participate in it, okay? When you have people from all walks of life and all beliefs and all, thank you, Mike, and all perspectives and understanding, the larger that group is, the bigger that whole is, and the more we actually hold in worth and in the potential for progress. Okay? There are going to be all sorts of opinions, even in regards to that. We are not homogeneous in our desire to seek unity. And even in that, that's still okay. Okay? So you're going to have people who disagree because they don't care about the world that we leave to future generations. You'll have people who are just unhappy and misery loves company. You will have people who feel like it's that they're just one small person and that they don't actually have any control or responsibility to the bigger idea of this country. And you'll even have people who just feel like they're too busy as far as that being applicable, something that they could do. Okay? But all of this aside, there still is a reason that we should unify, right? Regardless of where you stand, who you voted for, who you align with, who you supported, any of that. Regardless of that, first and foremost, we have a system, and our system feels like it's falling apart, and we should all, across party lines, be adamant in wanting the transparency and integrity in that system. If you win and it feels like there's no integrity in it, is it really a win? And if you lose, you want to know that you lost because that's just how the system worked out. So no matter where you stand, right? And people say, you know, if the current president wasn't losing, he wouldn't call for recounts. And at the same time, I believe that if the opposition were losing and called for recounts, I still think he would support that. But I think we all should support it regardless, right? A win that has no actual backing or transparency, is it really a win? And to have any continued faith in our system, I think that's something that's absolutely necessary, because I know for myself who I voted for, and even if he loses, if it was a legitimate loss, I can accept that. I can absolutely accept it. Does it mean I'll be happy? Absolutely not. Do I have faith in our system and what it's supposed to be? 100%. So regardless of your stance, you should be 100% in support of transparency, right? Because that will unify us in a way that means that this next election won't have the opposite record turnout of such minimal support because people find no value or justification in the system, okay? Secondly, I know you guys are smart, and I know you've heard the saying before, a house divided will always fall. And there's no way we've made it centuries and are about to fall. There's no way. So we have to find a way to unify ourselves. And there is the last point as far as unity is concerned that we all have to kind of be aware of, and that's the checks and balances in the system. Because we have to breed faith in this system that is faltering on such a massive scale. And it's not just the presidential election, okay? We have the House election, the Senate election, and it's crazy. And while people may appear to have voted for the left candidate in the House, that same party lost 4 seats. Its opposition gained 5. We are still not done with having any calls of victory in every state as we should have, but it stands to reason that regardless of whoever becomes president, that there is checks and balances, and there are checks and balances for a reason. The actual numbers for the Senate are very freaking close, and it means that we believe in the system on some scale. And you'd be surprised, right? Governorships weren't up for election in every state, but of the states that were, there are 3 that went Democratic, 2 of those by massive margins. And then there's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that went Republican. And some of those are very surprising, right? New Hampshire, Missouri, Utah wasn't surprising. West Virginia, that was surprising. Vermont, that was surprising. Like, a lot of these things are meant to create checks and balances. So this is what I'm saying as far as, and I mentioned in the title somewhere about a call to action. Regardless of where you stand, you should not in any way be arguing that people's search for transparency is a bad thing. Because if Joe Biden clearly won, hands down, if he clearly won, then that recount will only show that. And it will take any naysayers and eliminate that ability to question or say anything against anything. Over the last 4 years, there's been a lot of videos and a lot of compilations of people losing their minds, of people screaming at the top of their lungs, saying, no, this is not my president, whatever the case may be. And a lot of people have found those amusing. It's actually really hard for me. If I'm being 100% honest, I don't want to see anybody feel like their world is falling apart. And I don't care what side they're on. I don't. I want people to have faith in the system so that the system continues to exist. Because when it fails to exist and there's nothing else to take its place, anarchy will reign. And I don't think that will do any of us any good. I don't think any of us want that as the world that we leave to the next generation. I just don't see any positivity in that. Okay? So there's the first group. The first group should adamantly support transparency no matter what. Now the second group is going to be a little more partisan, but be that as it may, I think people should push things to the limit, and when the ceiling is hit and there are no more avenues to take, then acquiescence should be a thing. Absolutely and entirely. Okay? So, I'm going to give a little background as to why I say this first, and then I'm going to explain it a little further. There was a teacher in my middle school who brought up a good point, and it was validated, and there are pictures and screenshots, and they had lived in Nevada for a very short period of time, and then they obviously now live in Utah. And just to check, they went to see if they had voted in Nevada, even though they knew that the actual effort they put in was in the state of Utah for one candidate. And come to find out, in Nevada, they had magically voted for the opposition. And so now I've spent the last day or so pulling up information, because I've moved around a lot, and I've had a driver's license in California, I've had one in Arizona, I've had one here in Utah, I've had one in Texas, and I also have had addresses in a lot of the swing states as well. And it's starting to look like one of the swing states and one of the blue states had me voting for the opposition. And that to me is a little ski-wampus. So if you're one of those people who has questions and really wants to verify things, if you lived in Michigan and now you live in Utah or Colorado, if you used to live in Vegas and now you live in New Mexico, right? This is the thing. These are those avenues of approach, right? Because I spent a hot minute just feeling like there was nothing I could do, and I was watching everything fall apart. This is my call to action for you people. If you are a transplant, if you've lived somewhere else, or maybe you have a deceased relative, because I have a deceased relative from 2015 from Arizona, and her, as well as apparently my background, it appears that we voted in states that we didn't. And that information needs to be sought out, and it needs to be brought to somebody's attention. And if it turns out that that is such a small minority of people, then we'll have at least gathered and compiled that information and can say, we found what we found, but that wasn't enough to sway anything. And so be it. At least we checked and we tried. Okay? I enjoy listening to Ben Shapiro for one reason, because I think he's very literal and doesn't mince words, and for another reason, because he is far more moderate than I am. I know that I can become entirely impassioned in a perspective, and that's not necessarily the smartest or safest way to make decisions. And so one of the things that he said is that Donald Trump never made a truer statement than saying to one of the crowds, well, to a crowd in one of his rallies, it isn't that the government hates you because you support me. They hate me because I support you. And if you are a Trump supporter and you're looking at this as this is his fight and his legal battle, then you've already kind of handed over things and you have accepted your lot or your position in this. And if that's the case, then so be it. I'm not saying this to you at all. I'm not. But if you're someone who sees discrepancies, the best thing that you can do is find a way to validate those discrepancies and then seek out a means with which to transfer that information. I am going to be creating a couple of groups. One that is all about raising awareness and supporting the integrity of this election, regardless of where you stand. Again, if you won, you want that to be completely and utterly unquestioned, that this election has gone every way it can, and it is from this point forward that we're moving. Okay, the second group is with regards to any sort of information that undermines the integrity of this election. And that group is going to consist of anybody who gets information or anybody who is willing to seek out means with which to convey that information to the powers that be and can do something about it. The last group that I want to organize is anybody who might have a little extra spare time, or anybody who is willing to put forth the effort, because it's about information getting to everybody. It's about getting all the information in a way that people can utilize it. So maybe different states' websites for verifying and validating votes and where they've gone, as well as checking relatives or, deceased friends to see if by chance they may have voted somewhere. Because at the end of the day, right, I don't know how, I'm sure all of you guys know about this, but what this serenity prayer really says, and it's a useful tool if you know what you're looking at. Serenity to accept the things that you can't change, courage to change the things that you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Either way, we have to come together. Whoever you supported, we are all technically on the same team. We are. Nobody's moving out of country. Nobody is undervaluing or disassociating with any other citizen in this country. We have got to find a way to come together. This divisiveness will tear us apart. Any of you guys who've read, gosh, why am I forgetting his name? Is it Sun Tzu? He wrote The Art of War, right? And he said the best way to defeat an opponent is to divide them amongst themselves and have them defeat each other. And regardless of where you stand, we are all Americans, all of us. So winning, you should want to win with transparency, just as it is easier to accept a loss if it's transparent, no matter how this election turns out, right? And that's not just the presidential election. It's not just House or Senate, even these governorships. We should all be wanting to find a way to uphold the integrity of the system, regardless of how it turns out. If we want to go back and recount 2016, I'll support that all the same. Absolutely. But one of the things that I heard that was wonderful to me was the idea that no matter which side you're on, this concept of people on any side being weak and just willing to accept win or loss or whatever, those people are no more, right? And that is fundamental, because this country was founded on people who were not just going to accept anything anymore without a fight, right? So if it is that we have a 46th president, then I absolutely 100% want to make sure that that is validated in a way that nobody can question. If that's the case, absolutely, 100%. I absolutely want us to be able to validate that so there is zero question whatsoever. But I want the system to remain intact, because this is one election, and it's not the last election we'll ever have, nor is it even close. The other thing is this: there are checks and balances. And if you look at the way that this election has gone, especially for the House, but also for the Senate, it's that extremes on either side were absolutely and utterly destroyed. Nobody wants absolute tyranny, just like nobody is willing to jump the gun and say we're ready for absolute socialism at all. So you have to have faith that somewhere, as a group, this massive variety of opinion and belief and thought combined and averaged out has some sense to it. And so I'm going to close with this, okay? It's the same quote that I started with. And for those of you who missed it, it's a darn good one. Ronald Reagan said, "The price of freedom may be high, but never so costly as the loss of freedom." Now, any of you guys who want to help me create these different groups or organizations, or seek out a way to find compromise back and forth across the aisle, by all means, let me know. Shoot me a message, whatever it is that we can do from here. But we've got to find a way to come together, and in a way that allows us all to feel like the system worked, no matter what. No matter what. I hope you all are finding some semblance of sanity and turning off the TV and enjoying yourself and your day and your family and your friends wherever you are.